Greetings loyal subscribers and honoured guests. Time for another edition of the Xbox Zone, and this week I'm shifting over from a brand new release to a couple of games that came out for the Xbox 360 and aren't backwards compatible with the Series X at all. Back in 2013, Bandai Namco teamed up with Avi Arad's production company to develop and release a brand new kids TV series based on Pac Man and his friends, entitled Pac Man and the Ghostly Adventures. Instead of building on the existing continuity that was present in games like Pac Man and the Pac Man World series, Ghostly Adventures was a reboot featuring brand new character designs and settings.
Anything I can do for you, Miss G?
No thanks, you're doing a fine job.
Yummy! Clyde, good to see you!
Why? Have I been turning invisible again?
Pac Man was now a student at Maze High boarding school along with his pals Cylindria and Spiral. The classic ghost gang of Blinky, Inky, Pinky and Clyde also made it over, but they received something of an overhaul to make them more distinct from one another by more than just their colour. The series saw the good guys regularly going up against the main bad guy Betrayus as he attempted to locate the repository, a storage facility containing all of the corporeal bodies of the ghosts. Should Betrayus get his hands on the repository, then he could bring himself and every other ghost back to life. This is essentially the setup for the two video games that were released as well, the first in late 2013 and the second in 2015 as the TV show was coming to the end of its run. These games now take the form of classic 3D platform games in a similar vein to something like Super Mario Galaxy, and they were also released on the PlayStation 3, the Wii U and the Nintendo 3DS. Of course, I am talking about the Xbox 360 version here, but the game performs quite similarly across all the major consoles. As is usually the way with games of this type, the story sees you exploring multiple themed areas such as the city of Pacopolis, a lava area, a jungle area, an ice area, and so on, each of which grant Pac Man a new power-up, before later areas allow you to shift between all the different power-ups for a very small increase in challenge. In the jungle area, for example, the power pill grants Pac Man the ability to swing from one pole to the next using his sticky chameleon tongue. In the lava area, he is able to freeze columns of fiery lava so that they can temporarily be used as platforms. He can also snuff out fire ghosts with his ice powers so that they can safely be eaten. Much like in the original Pac Man game, eating ghosts doesn't finish them off permanently. Pac Man spits out their eyes and then they can be brought back in a rejuvenation chamber, which is a bit weird and gross, it has to be said. This wouldn't be a true 3D platformer without things to collect, and in these two games the shiny objects you are collecting include Pac Dots, which allow you to open up new areas if you have collected enough. I found that I never had to go back to old levels in order to collect more of these, thankfully. Just playing through the levels once normally while picking them up was sufficient. There are also coins or arcade tokens which can be spent on the arcade machines found in the high school. Each of these is a mini-game based around one of Pac Man's fruit-based vehicles such as the pineapple tank. I thought they were surprisingly well designed but not too tough to beat 100%, and each one of them awards an achievement upon completion. The second game didn't really have these mini-games with the exception of the tunnel one, which it stole outright from one of the early levels. In terms of presentation, these games are absolutely fine. The visuals are bright and colourful with a nice clean look to them, and for the most part the game performs well, but I did notice the occasional stutter here and there. For the Xbox 360 this is nothing unusual though, and it doesn't really hamper your enjoyment of the game. As for the sound, the game does really benefit from having the same voice cast as the cartoon, and most of these voice actors are seasoned professionals who have played many characters already. The music is decent enough but gets a bit repetitive from time to time.
You were right, Cersei. I found another tablet.
Well, I better get cracking on translating that.
Whoa! How'd you do that?
I don't know. First time I tried it. No time to worry about that, though. Spiral and Silly are still out there somewhere. You best get a move on and find them.
Will do!
These two games are by no means challenging. You will lose a fair few lives I expect, but you'll also be earning so many then it's never really an issue. And even if you were to see a game over, then you can just continue with no penalty. The challenge level doesn't really matter so much though. What does matter is that the levels are cleverly designed and fun to play. For the most part I would say that they are, and I really enjoyed my time playing through the first game in particular. By the time I was getting towards the end of the sequel though, I was starting to grow tired of the formula. Whereas the first game feels new, albeit very derivative of other games in the genre, the second game brings very little to the table and just feels like an excuse to try and sell fans the same thing again. It's by no means a terrible sequel, but it doesn't set itself apart nearly enough to justify its existence. There are very small tweaks made to each of the Pac Man transformations, so that they gain new skills on top of old ones, but it's just not enough. Each game takes roughly 12 hours or so to complete, and for most of the time I was having fun. I know that other channels such as CGR Undertow really laid into these games for being derivative of other better games, such as Super Mario Galaxy, and I do see their point, especially if you are going to be playing these games on a Wii U, where there are so many better choices already for this style of game. Even on the PS3 you have access to the Ratchet & Clank, Sly Cooper and Jak and Daxter collections, so I wouldn't recommend choosing these over those. On the Xbox 360 though, which is after all the point of this video, your options for decent 3D platform games are considerably less, making these more appealing. Both games will set you back roughly the same amount on eBay, which is about £12, but you don't need both. The second game is the slightly better designed one, as there are more powers per transformation, and the game has been subtly tweaked in other areas as well, so that the controls feel a bit tighter and the camera is a fraction better. If you were to put the two games side by side though, they are essentially the same, so from that perspective I can't say that Pac Man and the Ghostly Adventures 2 is a very good sequel. For that reason, I would give the first game a score of 7 out of 10 and the second game a score of 6 out of 10, on the basis that a 5 out of 10 is an average experience all round. That brings us to the end of another episode of the Xbox Zone. Have you played either of these games? Did you ever watch the cartoon they were based on? I have no idea how successful the show was, but given that it only lasted for 2 years, and Bandai Namco have reverted to a more classic Pac Man design now, I don't expect it performed amazingly well. I'm still working away at completing the game I want to cover for the next episode, so hopefully I will manage to finish it in time for then. If not, I may have to find an alternative. That's not for another few weeks though, so it should be fine. Join me again next time then, and in the meantime, take care.
That's me!